in our first part, we're going to learn how to draw stars. I can click my star tool, go to my workspace, click and drag, and I will be able to draw a standard star, and I can rotate while I am drawing this. I can also double click on the star settings. So I can go to my star tool and double click here, and then that will give me some options. Then I can specify the exact radius 1, radius 2, and then the number of points I want on my star, and click OK. So that's where I can set a star up exactly the way I want. I can also go to my star tool, and as I'm drawing, I can hold my left mouse down, and I can use the up and down arrows to change the number of points in my star. So as I'm drawing, I can also use the up and down arrows to specify the number of points. And finally, I can hold the Control key down if I would like to have long pointy arms. So as I'm drawing, I can hold the Control key, and I can adjust these to either be chubby or long and pointy arms. And finally, the last thing is I can also hold the Shift key, and when I do that, that will force my star to draw straight to make sure it's exactly even. If I want to make these even, with my selection arrow, I can highlight all these and get my bounding box. And then in our properties, under Align, I can click Horizon Center. So while these are centered, they're still not aligned evenly. So in the Align panel, I can click More Options, and I can go over to Distribute Spacing and distribute those so that way they are spaced a little bit more evenly. Next, we're going to go and add a gradient in some of our designs. We can use gradients in several different ways. We can start by going to Window, Gradient. In my toolbar, I've got my fill. So make sure I'm on my fill, not my stroke. And I can go and click G for the gradient tool. In my properties, I can do a linear, radial, or freeform. Here I'm just going to choose a linear gradient. And then I want to be able to change the colors in my gradient. So in my properties, I can go to my gradient options, and here's where I can change my colors. Remember, I can double click on my gradient slider and choose whatever colors I want. If I want to add one, I can click Add, and I can also adjust the different positions. I can also select my shape, and I can go to Swatches, the Library, and then I also have a lot of gradient options in the Swatches panel. We'll learn a little bit about color harmonies later, but again, I can pick a color harmony I like, double click, and it will automatically be added into that shape. From our Swatches panel, we can click our options, and we can switch to a large thumbnail view, and you can put your mouse over and it will tell you the name, or you could do a large list view as well. So there are several ways that you can find different gradients to use. In this case, I have duplicated my shapes, and now I want to go and change this to a radial gradient. So I'm going to select my shape. Under Gradient, I can do Edit Gradient, and then under Type, I can go and change it to Radial. So I can do that with all of these options. I can also go and even adjust the gradient here for the different stops, the opacity, and to make that a little bit different if I want to work with my gradient here. Another item that we can do, let's take this example, is we can also reverse our gradient. So we can click Edit Gradient here, or we can click our three options, and right here is the Reverse Gradient option. So there are several ways that we can go and add gradients in our shapes. Next, I can also practice drawing other shapes like my rectangle tool. So if I hold the Shift key down, that will constrain it to a perfect square. I can also double click under the rectangle tool and get an exact height and width. I can draw my ellipse. Remember, I can hold my shift key to draw a perfect circle. And then I can just go and draw an oval as well. Once I click on my shape, I have my live corner widget. So I can click and drag, and that will adjust all of the corners. I can double click in just one, drag, and then I can round the corner by a very specific amount if I desire. Using the direct select tool, I can double click on my corner, and I have a couple of options. I can choose the style of corner, and I can also manually adjust the radius, and then I can also decide how much I want the rounding to be. I've gone and added a gradient stroke on these, and I can also go and adjust the appearance of the stroke. So with my shape selected, I can click stroke, and I can go and make these dashed. I can make them dotted. I can adjust these for any type of pattern that I would like to go, use, and save. I can also go and adjust an arrowhead at the beginning, and I could adjust an arrow ending as well if I wanted to. And if I didn't want one, I could just go and delete that. And finally, under stroke, I can adjust the profile for how thick or thin I would like to have various ones for my stroke. So again, in the appearance panel, I can just click stroke and then go and choose one of the different profiles. And right here, I can flip along either edge on which design I would like. And the last thing we'll show you really quick is how you can use the curvature pen tool. So right now we've got our perfect shapes, but we can go over to our curvature tool, click and drag, and that will let us edit different anchor points along the path. So even though we may have drawn an exact square, circle, or star, we can then go in with the curvature pen tool and rearrange these however we like. Thanks for listening to another tutorial from Seven Lee High School on Adobe Illustrator.